And we're back for game number 2 of this best of 3. Mouz Sports taking on RoX.KIS in our second best of 3 on the day in our inaugural edition of the RoX Invitational, leading things off here this weekend. I'm AC, joined by Merlini for the broadcast. And, let's make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mouz Sports was slow and methodical in the way they closed the door in game number 1. But they ran away with that game probably 15, 20 minutes before the GGs actually came out. And really, I think we were both in agreement where RoX.KIS seemed to run into trouble was the fact that they had their lanes went okay. Everything seemed to be pretty stable. They actually had a real big win in mid with Puck killing off the Beastmaster twice. But their communication wasn't there. They had a lot of missed opportunities. And more than anything, they were just seemed kind of helter-skelter and scattered in their team fight.
Yeah, they didn't seem too confident in the lineup that they played. They had a very good start, and they had a lot of missed opportunities. I think they didn't take advantage of their significantly awesome early game, especially from Puck. Just seems like things fell apart. That was definitely in part by Mouz's excellent teamwork.
And we can see right now, Mouz is actually going to show us a first pick Prophet. You and I talked a little bit about that in our first series and even a little bit during the draft for game 1. Prophet is a hero who's seen his popularity wax quite a bit in recent weeks and months. He was more or less relegated to a situational 4th or 5th pick for the longest time. But now, teams just place so much emphasis on his ability, and this is something you touched on at the end of game 1. His ability, he can do a lot. He can dip into the jungle if he has to. He can start out in the off lane if that gets uncomfortable. He can then dip into the jungle, then be able to teleport back to the off lane to hold a tower if it's getting pushed early, and so on and so forth. But more than anything, it doesn't really matter how well he starts. He's almost always going to be able to play catch-up. And we saw Koikfa put that to use very, very well in the mid-game stages of game 1.
The only problem is now that there's Mag, and looks like RoX.KIS will not take him. But yeah, Nature's probably very, very strong. Can sometimes pull the creep using the Treants if you want some XP in the off lane if it's versus a relatively easy dual or triple lane. But most of the time he will get zoned out. But he can always come back, and Koikfa played him very, very well. He made very efficient use with his global teleportation, being in most of the fights, pushing towers down, and coming in for Roshan, getting his Midas Shadow Blade up, and Sheep very, very fast. And it looks like Magnus will go to Mouz Sports. Magnus just opens up a lot more melee heroes for the team to use, especially with the Empower Cleave. Usually we see him run a lot with perhaps AM, even like Wisp Tiny, even though Wisp is banned. That Cleave with the Empower, and especially if you had early Battle Fury, is absolutely ridiculous.
Taking a look at RoX.KIS, and this feels familiar. They're going to have reach. They're going to have the ability to fight. They have a nice balance of magic damage and physical damage with Lifestealer and Keeper of the Light, as well as Storm Spirit contributing predominantly to the magic damage side of it. But again, it wasn't. I actually felt like they had an extremely strong draft in game 1. In fact, if I was pushed, I would have said they had the better draft in game 1, but it's all about how well they use it. And with, the Nake's Bomb, as powerful as it is, you have to be willing to commit to it. You have to be willing to roll the dice and make sure that your communication is top-notch. We're going to see how they round their lineup out. But Mouz Sports just has a lot of stability. As you mentioned, Magnus opens up their options very nicely, gives them great initiation and counter-initiation. Rubik is just as strong as any support can, offensive or defensive tri-lane, depending on what their goals happen to be. So Mouz is going to be wide open. One thing I do want to touch on again, just because I think it is worth mentioning, Cinderin making his Mouz Sports debut after his pickup, replacing Alex, who Mouz let go just days ago. He looked damn good in game 1, man. Damn good.
Yep, I still know that he plays a lot. I see him scrim fairly often, and he's still active in the scene, even if he isn't actually on a top-tier competitive team. He still plays and tries to keep up in shape. Mouz's lineup, as you would say, is very robust. Magnus good aggressor, and good turtler as well. Rubik can work well in aggressive and defensive triple lanes, and Nature's Prophet can pretty much just do anything. He can gank, he can split push, he can carry.
Well, taking a look at the bans and the way they're going right now, Mouz getting rid of another very strong, and I like the fact they banned the Druid out. Druid, we have no rules, by the way. I'm under the the Perfect World Tournament. Took me a second to get the name out. The new Perfect World Tournament, the GameFi Tournament, however you want to label it, is banning the use of the armlet on Lone Druid. We have no such rules in place. Not to say we might not implement them, but as of today and as of right now, it hasn't been an issue and probably won't be an issue. But with the Druid, being banned out. I love the synergy between Lifestealer and Druid, so very wise for Mouz to take that out, and more magic damage and a very strong laner in Lena works really well with Lifestealer being able to follow up and open wounds with a Light Strike Array. She's banned out, and we can just see that RoX.KIS just doesn't want to let any carries, as you had mentioned, that synergize particularly well with Mouse Sports' Magnus. Don't want to let those carries into the pool. Phantom Lancer that's empowered just is unbelievably sick and hard to deal with late game. Gyrocopter, a hero who maybe more so than most benefits a lot from Empower in the mid game. It really allows him to start putting Flak Cannon to use a lot earlier, and they're going to go ahead and round out those bans with an Alchemist as well.
Yep, and we have seen PL bans before, but it's usually on the team opposite of the Keeper of the Light holder. But we have seen Mouse Black use the PL to great effect, even without a Keeper of the Light, especially with them having the first pick and lacking a carry, especially a melee carry with Magnus. I think that's a very smart ban by RoX.KIS.
Anti-Mage very much on the menu if they want to go that way. They're going to go ahead and grab the Bane, a nice counter to Lifestealer. We saw one of the better counters in Game 1 in the Shadow Demon, but didn't really see him used to all that much effectiveness. Bane now, since Lifestealer is on the other side, will be handled by Mouse Sports. Bane almost as good as Shadow Demon. Again, it comes down to preference and what you prefer. I love Enfeeble on Bane. The fact that Enfeeble cannot be purged by Magic Immunity, be it Rage or be it a BKB on another hero, so that gives him that extra little bit of utility. And of course, Fiend's Grip, I would say just about the literal hard counter to Lifestealer's entire skill set.
5 seconds remaining.
Yeah, one of the problems with Bane, though, is he will get jumped on by Storm almost every time if he chooses to channel it on Lifestealer. RoX.KIS is actually lacking a little bit on stuns right now. Lifestealer, no stun. Keeper of the Light, only Mana Leak, which is pseudo stun. And other than that, I think they need some disables. They're still lacking one support and an offlaner, most likely. I don't know. We saw Darkseer very first pick last game, but he hasn't even been picked in the first, 17 heroes now?
Yep, exactly. So Darkseer is still available. Clockwork is still available if they wanted to go with something like that. I really wouldn't mind a Clockwork at all. I don't think it's going to be picked up by Mouse, but they're going to go ahead and go for damage. Want the consistent right click, as well as one thing I do love about a Weaver is how well he cracks towers. Once he gets up, especially in MKB, which he'll probably get up after one survivability item, more and more often it's a Lincoln Sphere that comes out pretty early on a Weaver. Get the Lincolns up and then the MKB. And if you're ahead at that point, the other team just has the hardest time holding their towers up because he can just sit right at max range, even on the low ground, sieging the tier 3s, and not have any miss percentage.
10 seconds remaining.
Yep. I agree with you there. One problem with Weaver, though, especially if he does not have Lincolns, is that he will get Shikuji stolen by Rubik more often than not, and that just makes Rubik just one hell of a support.
Yep.
And Anti-Mage last pickup by Mouse.
Yeah, that's a hero Black loves to run. I was getting ready to talk about that a bit. When you looked at all the heroes available to them, I actually would have been more surprised if they didn't select the Anti-Mage. Black plays a good Anti-Mage, and I'll tell you what I really like about it as well is how well they're going to be able to split push with the Nature's Prophet and the Anti-Mage working in conjunction with each other. Given how high risk, high reward an Anti-Mage can play, whenever he has a little bit of someone else to take the pressure off in terms of the Prophet to draw the enemy's attention elsewhere. Not to mention Magnus. And, this is one of those games where we might even see Black forego a BKB even late, just so he can guarantee to have Empower on all the time.
Yes, I agree with you there. And Black is one of the best farmers in the Western scene. And if he gets a lot of space with Anti-Mage, it's going to be huge problems for RoX.KIS. And we see Tusk. We didn't see any of the new heroes last game, but now we see Tusk.
Yep, this is our second time today, man. We got to see Tusk earlier, played by Kuroki on Na'Vi. And yeah, what can we say? I wish I had a whole lot more to offer here. I understand how the hero works. I've played him and all that, but we just haven't seen him that much in competitive Dota, so it's hard to really predict what we can see out of him. I really liked what Kuro was able to do with the roaming approach that he took earlier. We saw him make a couple of funny mistakes, and that's one of the funny things about Tusk. Because Snowball is target on point and not target on hero, not target on point, if you miss or you misjudge it, you can find yourself in some pretty bad situations. So Tusk very much a high risk, high reward hero, and to be honest, I'd say that's true of most of RoX.KIS's lineup. Weaver's that way, Storm Spirit's that way, Lifestealer to a lesser extent is that way because once Rage wears off, the cooldown on it, short as it is a very big liability. So RoX.KIS once again putting themselves under the gun to execute. Just hope that they have a little bit better in store than what we saw in Game 1.
Yep, and now Nyx is on their side, and they have the potential for the ever so devastating Nyx bomb with him inside Storm Spirit, and we'll be looking out for that. And I like the Storm plus Keeper of the Light combo. It's really, really nice to be able to chakra him, and if he really needs mana, he can just TP home and then get recalled back for a full mana pool. So that's very, very nice to have both those heroes on the same team.
Weaver and Storm both really work well with the Keeper for the exact reason you just talked about, and not just in situations like that, but equally just in flat-out 5-on-5s. If you have your Storm engage and he ends up blown up or Weaver's caught out of position and he dies, they can effectively buy an Aegis just by buying back, so long as the Keeper of the Light has his ult activated and is back where he needs to be, away from the fight, and then he can TP those heroes right back in to re-engage with fresh mana pools, fresh health pools. So that's something they're going to have to be very, very conscious of. Keeper's going to have to be, even if he is further back, is going to have to be a target. We can see both teams dancing back and forth. Here come the Ice Shards. That's going to connect on Syndra and possibly the open wounds. There's an Illuminate as well. And Syndra down below half health. Shikuchi's there. Black trying to block them. Will be able to get off a salve. So narrowly avoiding a first blood situation. And if that sets the tone, got a feeling going to be a pretty exciting game of Dota here, my friend.
Indeed. I like RoX.KIS' choice of doing an aggressive triple lane here. This is an effort to shut down Black's farm. They tried it last game, but it didn't seem to work out too well. But again, you can't really give Black free farm or you're probably going to lose in like the 25 to 30 minute mark when he has Battle Fury, Manta, and like 2 other items.
Koikva going to be going up against the Lifestealer in top. And, I mean, the only problem I have with this is you've got 2 heroes, and, you know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, the Tusk and the Keeper of the Light. Keeper of the Light can work in an offensive tri-lane, doesn't tend to work quite as well offensively as he does defensively, just because the offensive tri-lane by its nature tends to suffer a little bit in terms of experience gain, and you obviously want him as high level as possible, as quickly as possible. But with Tusk, I mean, he's got his first point in the shards. You know, he just doesn't have the mana pool to fight a lot here. And once he's out of mana, he's just a big walking kill, basically.
So it looks like Black is getting at least a decent amount of last hits early. He has 3 already, even against his aggressive triple lane.
And, you know, what it's going to come down to is who decides to engage first. Bane opening up with a Nightmare. They're going to have Telekinesis there as well. And, you know, again, to me, the problem's the mana pools. Eventually, once this Keeper hits level 3, it'll get a lot easier because he'll have level 2 Chakra Magic. He can support his own mana pool as well as that of another teammate. But until then, I mean, the Weaver can spam like hell just because he's Weaver. He's even picked up a Bassie now. So that'll certainly help. But, yeah, I mean, I worry a lot because this is another one of those tri lanes, and if it gets behind, they're not really going to have much of a chance to play their way back into it.
Black having a very good item pickup choice with the Poor Man Shield. It works very well against the Geminate Attack Harass and the constant right click from the 2 range heroes in RoX.KIS' lane. So he only has 1 Tango left, so he is under constant pressure by them, again, in an effort to shut down his farm. So looking at the last hits and denies, we see Furion and Magnus on top of the charts, both with 10, and AM and Storm closely behind with 9 each. So it looks like mid lane is going fairly evenly for Solo. He's not running away like last game. He will look like he's going to pick up a regen rune, although there is no bottle yet on him. He opted for an early Null Talisman instead of the triple branch Tango bottle rush like we usually see.
Been seeing a lot of that, actually. Storm Spirits that'll get up 2 Null Talismans as quickly as they possibly can, just to give them that much more punching power early on. Makes them feel a little bit harder to deal with there. The Shard's going to be thrown out on Syndra, and now he's going to use Telekinesis. That'll stun out the Weaver. Weaver has been enfeebled, and now they're going to re-engage with the Ice Ball. Nice Nightmare, but still not nearly enough. And Black trying to re-engage, burning away at the mana of these heroes. And he's not out. Yep, there we go. I was going to say he could pursue him, but not going to opt to do so. Dread still enfeebled. But, as is, First Blood goes on the board. Nice start to this offensive tri-lane.
Yeah, and to be honest though, it's not that big a deal for Mouz to give up First Blood in that manner, especially if it's not AM. AM is still getting farm, and their supports are still getting some sort of levels they managed to de-ward with this sentry. So again, not too costly of a death. You're kind of expected to lose the triple lane, especially with a defensive one such as this. They don't really have any damage